This is Michael Cowen, and welcome to Trial Lawyer Nation.
You need to show people the worst possible harm that negligence could have caused, because that's what the case is about.
What I'm asking you to do is to focus on what you can control, because that's where the power lies.
The Dalai Lama has a saying that in the face of anger, justice evaporates.
If you can't focus group it, you have to be very, very critical of your process.
The facts aren't good. You can't create a miracle.
We can agree to disagree and be zealous advocates for our clients.
Quit worrying about looking perfect. You're not going to. That'll come in time. But you can still be an effective litigator.
Welcome to the award-winning podcast, Trial Lawyer Nation, your source to win bigger verdicts, get more cases, and manage your law firm. And now, here's your host, noteworthy author, sought-after speaker, and renowned trial lawyer, Michael Cowen.
Today on Trial Lawyer Nation, we have a special episode. This is not our regular episode, either introduced on the 1st or the 15th, but instead we are doing a special episode to talk about how to survive and hopefully thrive in a law practice in the midst of this shutdown and shelter-in-place situation that we're in with the COVID-19 virus. I've got Jacob Leibowitz with me. Jacob's an attorney at our firm, and he has spearheaded our efforts to leverage technology to keep the practice going. How are you doing today, Jacob?
I'm doing well. How are you, Michael?
I'm doing fine, sitting on my back porch and working from home like the rest of us are.
I have my virtual background on so that y'all can't see the mess behind me. So if I cut in and out, that's why.
So I think the one thing is, what are some things, Jacob, that we're doing to keep our cases moving during this time?
I think one of the most important things, and you brought this up with the firm at the very beginning, is that we have to have depositions go forward. In a time like this, it's very easy to go ahead and cancel all of our depositions, but that's not realistic to keep the firm moving forward. And the biggest way we've tried to do that is to leverage Zoom in our firm, but there are a lot of other video conferencing programs that you can use. But yeah, I would say depositions and then get the mediation set for sure.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of the challenges. I think one challenge is in some states, the default rule is that whoever swears in the witness needs to be in the same room as the witness when they swear the witness in for purposes of making the oath sufficient to prosecute someone for perjury. Right. What have you been doing to overcome that objection?
So fortunately in Texas, our Supreme Court has come down with a couple different emergency rulings, and one of them actually addresses that specific issue. And it allows remote notaries to swear in the witness via video conferencing, essentially. To be perfectly honest, I don't know what the rules are or what the Supreme Courts in other states have done, but I have to imagine there's something similar going on. And if not, I implore the listeners to ask their different groups, trial lawyer groups or whoever, to ask their Supreme Court to do that.
And look at your state's online notary laws. A lot of states have what they call an online notary. And like I have a friend in Florida, and he said that from the beginning, their online notary could swear in a witness remotely, so they didn't have that problem. Even under Texas law, there's a question as to whether or not they can or not. The law is a little unclear without the Supreme Court's order, but luckily our Supreme Court stepped in. Other things, so that means you don't have to have a videographer or a court reporter in the same room as the witness. Everyone can be in a separate room. How about recording the video of the depo? How are we going about that?
So that's a little bit up in the air as we kind of experiment with the technology, but Zoom does offer an opportunity to record just within the program itself. Now we're going to have to wait to see exactly how it works in terms of the rendering time afterwards. But it's a very easy solution for kind of making sure your depositions go forward now. And ultimately, it's not going to have a huge effect, I don't think, on whether or not how you're going to be able to use the video to impeach a witness at trial.
Some people recommend having a backup camera as well, either a camera in the room with a witness if that's possible, or if not, either a camera recording your screen or maybe a program like Camtasia that can record what's going on in your screen as a backup just in case Zoom fails. Now, Zoom isn't perfect as far as it's not as high def as what you'd necessarily get if you had a high def camera in the room. But I mean, we're doing this by Zoom and it seems to be working pretty well.
Absolutely.
Another thing on Zoom is sometimes we get some issues with the audio quality of doing audio over the internet going down. How do you resolve that?
So everybody's going online right now, and so it's going to eat up what a large amount of the bandwidth that's available just for the internet. On top of that, people have different internet speeds, and as a result, if you do the audio through the computer and you don't have a fast enough connection or there's not enough bandwidth, then the audio can get choppy. I think the best practice to make sure that the court reporter and the witness that the audio is going through is to have them call in by telephone, which is a feature that I know Zoom has, and I know a couple other programs have. But basically, you would mute your audio on the computer, and then you would call into a group number, and that's how you would get your audio feed.
Yeah, I know Zoom, WebEx, GoToMeeting, all those places have an audio, and it will still get recorded and synced with the video.
Right.
How about exhibits? I mean, one of the objections I've heard to using video conferencing for depo was, how do I show the exhibit to the witness? I don't want to give all the exhibits to the witness in advance because I don't want to clue them in.
That's definitely a tricky part of it. I actually worked on with all the lawyers in our firm, and we created a guide. And I think you're going to be making it available.
Yeah, it's going to be in the show notes. If anyone wants to download the guide, look at the show notes, and you can download our guide to doing Zoom video depos.
Perfect. So we kind of did a mock deposition where we go through the process of sharing an exhibit. In terms of best practices to make sure it's attached to the exhibit, I would try and enter some sort of agreement or stipulation on the record with opposing counsel to make sure that, and I've done this before just in a deposition that's not by Zoom, but you can send your exhibits to the court reporter at the end. In terms of sharing it in Zoom does have the actual share screen features. Rather than kind of try and talk through it, I would recommend y'all go get the guide. It's an ongoing guide that we're making, and we're attempting to consistently update it as we have new tips. But it's a good way to get you started on doing Zoom depos, and there's a large section in there on using exhibits.
And just to show people, if I go here to share my screen, I can go and, for example, I can share our guide, and now both of us can look at to doing video depositions. And then if I wanted to, I'm going to page through here, I could highlight something while we're talking, and live annotate, point at, circle, whatever I wanted to do. And then the witness sees the document. It also shows up on the video. So it actually makes, I think, a better record for the video than most of the time when we just hand the witness a printed document, the witness is looking at it, and it's not showing up on the video.
No, I absolutely agree. It's unless in terms of an economic way of annotating exhibits where everybody could see it in the future, this is actually almost better than a normal setup.
So now that you've done a few of these, do you think when all this is over, you may be traveling a little less and doing more of these Zoom depos?
Depending on what the deposition is, I think that there's a high probability that some of these depositions will be done almost exclusively by Zoom.
Yeah, I was thinking we may be able to get a lot more efficient and spend a lot more time actually in the office and seeing each other when this is over, given Absolutely. That we're learning how to do this. What else are we using Zoom for?
We kind of use it. It's a soup to nuts thing for us right now. We use it for client meetings. I had a client meeting this morning, and, I think my main advice would be for everybody to just be patient with it, because my client and I were sitting there just mouthing words to each other for about 30 seconds. And I was able to use the chat feature to just let him know, hey, look for the audio option, because he hadn't turned on the audio option. And then we had a great 20, 30-minute client meeting. and it worked really well. We're also using it a little bit within the office with our own staff, but we actually are using a program called Microsoft Teams, which for those of you who have Slack, it's very similar to Slack, or if you're using Salesforce, it's like Chatter or something like that. But it's just a way of chatting or video messaging within the office. So that's kind of our internal communication, but occasionally we do use it. We do use Zoom for our internal communications as well.
Yeah, and how have the clients been reacting that you've been talking to?
I think the clients seem to love it. It's almost a way to get more FaceTime with the clients than you normally would, especially since we have a lot of out of San Antonio clients. You can have a much quicker interaction. It doesn't take me 3 or 4 hours to go drive to a client's house to have that interaction, but you still get the face-to-face. And one thing I didn't mention was mediations, which we might be getting to.
Yeah, okay, so mediations. Now, how in the world do you do a mediation with Zoom when you need to have, privacy? Yeah. Where it's you and your client talking? Because, during this time, we are taking this very, very seriously at our firm. So I will not allow a lawyer and a client to be in the same room. I won't allow 2 of our lawyers to be in the same room. Or a lawyer and a mediator. I'm just being very, very strict because I think my first overall obligation above and beyond the financial is not getting any of our people or any of our clients sick. So how are we handling that in mediations?
So I actually thought that this was going to be one of the more frustrating things we had to overcome, because I thought it was going to involve a mediator with multiple different phone lines and maybe a cell phone and a landline trying to deal with the different parties. But believe it or not, Zoom actually has the features available. I feel like this sounds like a infomercial for Zoom, but it's not. But Zoom, we actually are going to put together a guide that will hopefully be available in the next couple of days, or we might already have it available when the podcast comes out. But there's a feature called Breakout Rooms that a mediator can use to assign people to rooms, and it's entirely private. So you can have the plaintiff and their client, the plaintiff and their counsel in one breakout room where nobody can get into except the mediator can pop in, and there's going to be a couple different best practices we're going to come up with on how the mediator should enter the room. But all the parties can be separated and the mediator can pop in and out, just like a normal mediation. And this actually might be easier than regular mediations if you have to travel to them.
And again, so much time we spend so much time and money traveling in this business. I'm hoping that this again becomes something that's going to, make some good out of this bad situation and become more efficient in the future. Now, we have had some mediators resist using Zoom, saying, well, I need people in the same room. I need to see people eye to eye. Even if you have your client by phone, I need you there. And the way I've overcome that is we just told them, well, you're not going to get paid, or you're going to do it this way. And right. So far, everyone's relented. And I think they're starting to get the realization this may be more than a week or two, and they're going to have to adapt, or they're going to be without income.
And I think that just brings up kind of a broader point that's extremely important, is that we have to act and do our business right now, assuming that this isn't going to change, and just have that thought in our head. Whether it's 3 months, 4 months or more, it's here right now, and we have to adapt to it.
Yeah, we're all hoping and praying that's a lot shorter than that. But I think, we're being prepared to go indefinitely as a remote office if need be.
Yeah.
How about overcoming objections from defense attorneys? Have you had any of that yet when you're doing the setting up depositions or mediations remotely?
So I haven't personally had that happen to me yet, but I have. We do communicate a lot, all the lawyers in the office, and I know several of us have experienced it. Really what we're trying to do and why we put the guide together was to say, hey, look, it's not that hard. And you actually had an interesting point related to defense firms and their billing that I think it'd be useful for people to hear, because I think that their objection is going to well, they're going to have objections, and I think you came up with a really good
the
idea.
one I have is, do you want to go out of business?
Right.
They have to bill to survive. I've got my cases in inventory, and as long as the insurance companies or our corporate defendants remain solvent, those cases are going to have their value. And we've got enough cash flow to withstand this. Defense firms, if they don't bill, they don't make any money. And at some point, they're either going to have to adapt, and by agreeing to do this stuff, or they're just going to run out of work to do, and they're going to go broke.
Now, that being said, I do think it's incumbent upon the plaintiff's lawyer to push the case, and that's going to involve probably, in a sense, educating our counterparts, the defense bar on the best practices for something like a Zoom deposition, for sure.
And one thing we've had to do a couple times is just to do a practice depo with them, so they can get comfortable with the technology, and that we can play with it, and they can see that it's going to work.
And I highly recommend that, for sure.
Now, we are all working remotely. That's been a challenge. So one thing we've had to do is, not all of our employees had laptops, and then we have had our IT people are just psycho about people could only remote in through our virtual private network on a computer that the firm owns. They're just they won't budge on that, and part of it is because we had a ransomware attack where someone got in through the hacker got in through a weakness in a different version of remote desktop we used to use. But so we've had to go and purchase a bunch of laptops a week and a half ago when we saw this coming, and then get everyone up to speed on it. And, luckily all but one employee had good enough internet at home to be able to work off a laptop. What are some of the other challenges you've seen in moving to a remote workforce?
I think one of the one that's most prevalent is kids. Having your kids at home as well. It's gonna create, well, so it's a challenge, but I think it's also a blessing in some ways. I get to maybe read them a book or spend a little extra time with them than maybe I normally would have, especially since we're saving commute time and all that. But it's certainly a challenge to not necessarily have your own kind of confined space, which I know a lot of people don't. To work.
Yeah, I don't have an actual home office within my home. And so it does create a challenge. Since I'm home, people just come up and talk to me. And luckily my kids are, my 8-year-old, I just say, look, I'm working right now. I'll talk to you later. And they're accepting it. Or, my eldest is doing virtual online school right now, but I went in to go do this meeting. I was going to do it in a different room, and he's playing video games, and I got to get him to turn off the video game so I can use the room. But it's been an issue. The other issue is, because we have 33 employees at our firm, we have an infrastructure that was really set up to have 5 to 8 people logging in remotely at any one time. And so while the computer allows 30-something people to log in at once, it does affect performance. So we've been migrating to the cloud, both getting all of our case files, slowly moving to the cloud through to something called Microsoft SharePoint. Other people use Dropbox. There's a bunch of different things people do. We use SharePoint because that's what Needles wants us to use. And we're even moving our Needles case management system to the cloud here in a couple weeks. When we can get in there. And so that's been a whole other set of challenges, is that on top of figuring out how to keep the firm running, how to get everyone moving remotely, and then I've been having to do all the back end work, making sure that we're going to be ready to move to the cloud, that we're rewriting some reports and recoding documents to make them work with the new system.
I think my advice to everybody out there would be to just go full force into this. Because you're gonna end up learning a whole lot, and you need to, but don't keep hoping that the social distancing is going to stop, because it's not going to anytime soon. But it's a huge opportunity to learn what's out there, what's available, what can make your practice more efficient.
In my thought, is even if the mandatory social distancing doesn't end sooner than we think it should, I don't want my people traveling and meeting with people until I am confident that it's safe to do so. Even if to save the economy, the government's going to say, well, the harm to the economy is worse than the harm of these extra people dying. So we're going to stop prohibiting businesses from being open and people from meeting. I still don't want my people to take that chance. So, we may be doing this longer than it's mandated just because, again, I care about y'all. I care about our clients. I even care about our opposing counsel.
Each year, the law firm of Cowen Rodriguez Peacock pays millions of dollars in co-counsel fees to attorneys nationwide on trucking and company vehicle cases. If you have a case involving death or catastrophic injuries and would like to partner with our firm, please contact us. We have experience finding potential defendants that other firms miss, and we've added millions of dollars to cases by finding these sources of recovery. If you have a catastrophic injury or death case where the policy limits appear to be insufficient, give us a call. If we can find another defendant, we can partner on the case. And if we can't, then we won't ask for any of the fees. You can reach Delisi Friday by calling 210-941-1301 or send an email to podcast@triallawyernation.com. She will coordinate a time for Michael Cowen to speak with you in person or by phone to discuss the case in detail. And now, back to the show.
How about court hearings? Have you heard anything yet on what courts are looking at doing?
I know different courts are trying to do different things. I know Mallory in our office had one court early on that hadn't wanted her to drive all the way up to Waco to actually attend a hearing, and then finally relented at the last minute and let her call in. I think the courts are catching up. I think they're going to be a little bit behind the firms. But my understanding is, at least in Bexar County, I know a judge is having a practice run to do her hearings by Zoom. But I think the reality is that civil personal injury cases are going to be pushed a little bit onto the back burner by judges.
Yeah, unfortunately, they're going to put the criminal and the family before us. The criminal, there's some constitutional requirements to keep things moving. And then I think social distancing is going to, all these people that had problems already being locked in a room together is going to create even more problems. There's going to be some emergency family situations. But, I've spoken to some judges. I feel that if we're not talking about a specific case, but we're talking about the overall administration of justice, you can talk to judges directly. And I've spoken to several judges. The Texas Supreme Court, at least in Texas, has put out how to use Zoom for hearings. They've actually published that. It's on their website. They've sent it out to the court. And the judges I've talked to said they're all looking at figuring out, and I think they're going to use Zoom actually, but how to use video conferencing.
They're actually going to have hearings by Zoom?
Yes, to get hearings by Zoom, and then to have, because courts have to be open to the public, either a Facebook Live or some other way where people couldn't participate, but they could watch the court hearings that were going on if they wanted to do that. And so that seems to be, that's looking like that's going to come out, at least in Texas, in early April. Every court's going to be doing its own thing around the state, but I would urge you, if you are friendly with any judges, to call your judge, talk to them about what other states are doing. I mean, go to the txcourts.gov, which is the Texas courts website, and go to the Texas Supreme Court. They have a whole page on what they're doing and the step-by-step instructions from to courts on how to hold a hearing by Zoom, because we need to keep these cases moving. If not, we're going to end up with a big backlog, and firms are going to have some real cash flow issues. On that, I haven't been involving you with it, but these are tough economic times. We need to be ready for cash flow disruptions. We need to be ready for insurance companies saying, well, yeah, we settled that case, but we don't have anyone that can sign checks or print checks because everyone's furloughed or working from home. I can see banks freezing up lines of credit as they get nervous. They did that during the 2008-2009 crisis. Right. So I know I have proactively made a draw to keep I have enough money that I drew out, even if we had no other income, to keep the firm going for at least 3 to 4 months. And I hate that because I'm paying interest on money that I don't need today. But that way I have it in an account, and it's an account I have it in an account by a different financial institution than the one that gave me the line of credit. So they can't just pull it back if they decide to call the line. And we have great credit. We have good cash flow. We have good financials, but they freak out during these times. And so, if you have a line of credit that's secured, like one of my lines of credit is secured by my stock portfolio, which is worth considerably less than it was a few weeks ago. And so, on that line, I'm being more careful because I've had communications with them. What is our loan? Reminded me, what is our loan to asset value? And so, I have to have what I have drawn on the line of credit has to be no more than 80% of what my balance is in my Merrill Lynch account. And so, given that my balance in my Merrill Lynch account is a lot less, I have to keep that in mind when I use that one. Now, luckily, I could still draw that one all the way up because it hasn't fallen that far. But it is, as the market continues to fall, that is something I want to look at. And I definitely don't want to pull any money out of the market because I've been through this, not the coronavirus, but I've been through market panics. And every time I've never taken money out, and a few years later, I'm always glad I didn't. So I think that's the other thing financially. Now this will be dated advice. Cutting overhead, layoffs. We're doing everything we can to avoid laying anyone off. The other thing is there is, right now the Congress is fighting over what kind of stimulus bill to pass. The Republican proposal, which I don't know if that's going to end up passing or not, would also include loans to small businesses. And if the loan proceeds were used for payroll and you maintained your payroll for a certain period of time, that part of the loan would be forgiven. But if you lay people off, you may lose the loan forgiveness. So I would definitely recommend that people defer any decisions on layoffs until they see what that ends up being, because you may end up losing more in potential free money on forgivable loans than you would save from doing that. But at the same time, look, you got to do what you have to do. And, like I said, we are blessed that we had an incredible year last year, and we're in a really good position to keep people on. But if you're not, you got to protect yourself. You can always hire people back later, but you have to do what you have to do to keep your whole business afloat, because you have to be able to keep, funding cases. I think another issue is you got to really look at, what are the cases you have with self-insured retentions, and then look at is this defendant someone that is in an industry that it's likely to have problems? I mean, I think the trucking industry is probably, depending on what they're hauling, I think a lot of the trucking industry is going to be thriving because there's so much more mail order. There's so much more food that needs to be delivered. I guess some of the deliveries to like retail stores are going to go down. But I think that I'm hoping that trucking continues to thrive. I'm really worried about my cases if there's a self-insured retention and I've got an oil services company on their side. Even without the coronavirus, I mean, oil's at 20-something bucks a barrel. I think it's a $60 a barrel minimum to keep the shale fields that we have here in Texas viable. And so, some of those companies aren't going to make it. And so if you have a case that has a big, you find out that they have, let's say, $100 million in insurance, but they have $1 million self-insured retention. Well, that may be gone if they go under. So you might want to look at that.
Now, one thing that we also are experiencing is we have some clients that actually do live in Mexico. And now that border's closed, it's going to be hard for them to get treatment. And honestly, I'm not sure what we're going to do about that to help facilitate them.
Yeah, there's the good thing is that, they are really loosening up the rules on telemedicine. And so I think that we're going to have to, encourage our clients to talk to their doctors. And I think a lot of our clients aren't going to want to go in and sit in a crowded doctor's lobby. I wouldn't. But we need to try to, facilitate our clients getting telemedicine so at least they can get prescriptions and get some relief. Most places, I know Texas is not allowing any elective surgical procedures to go forward. I don't know if that includes like epidural steroid injections, but definitely it would include spine surgeries. And that, is going to have an effect on slowing down treatment in cases and people unfortunately have to suffer extra. I think jurors are going to understand these delays. It's not going to have the kind of the gaps in treatment during these weeks during the crisis aren't going to be the same gaps in treatment you normally have. But to the extent you can get some telemedicine so you can document that the client's still in pain, maybe get the client some prescription medicine to help them endure the pain while they're waiting for the real procedures, I think that would help. And then doctors are just going to have to get comfortable, and they're going to have to get the technology to do it. But they're also going to want to do it because they're not out there doing procedures and stuff.
Well, I was going to say they're going to have the same problem as defense firms in terms of they have, just like everybody's going to have. You have to keep things moving, and we have to be. We just have to adapt. There was one question I wanted to, or one topic I wanted to bring up because you talked about the idea of laying people off, and as you've gone into this this entire time, I guess I imagine there's various stages of it, but it seems to have happened pretty quickly. But you're a business owner, a fairly decent sized firm, a lot of people that are on the payroll. How do you keep morale up? Because I think a lot of people are worried that they're not going to be able to work because they haven't been, or maybe they have family members that have lost their jobs. But what are the things that you've done at the firm to help keep morale up?
Well, we're over communicating. We are having many, many Zoom meetings, both within teams. And, I think every lawyer, paralegal team is supposed to check in every day. We lawyers have a 9:30 meeting every morning. Just constant communication to let everyone know what's going on. And the other thing is, we were very proactive. I saw this coming, and so even before we had the orders, we had already bought the laptop, and we told people we're not planning on laying anyone off. I've drawn down money. We have enough money to operate for multiple months without layoffs. So that's what I'm trying to do to comfort people, let them know that I care about them, let them know we're not laying them off. And just hopefully they believe me.
And as somebody who's kind of been on the downline of all that, it's been extremely helpful to have those daily meetings with just seeing everybody's face. We're all in it together, kind of thing. And I highly recommend every attorney out there have one or two, preferably two meetings with your paralegal or legal assistant or medical records clerk every day, and it. From my perspective, the morale has increased just knowing that we're all pushing to make things happen. So you have these meetings, and the tone of the meetings is really we're just doing work. We're doing it a little bit differently, but we're laying out the things we have to get done that day. We're talking about the things that we did that day in the later meeting, and it takes your mind off all the craziness around you, and you can just focus on what we have to get done.
Yeah, and I think it's so important that communicate what everyone's committing to do that day, because it's really easy when you're working from home to go back and forth between just checking your email, being reactive, looking at social media, surfing the internet, watching the news. I mean, it's easy to get distracted. And I think when you've committed, I'm going to get this done today, and then you get it done today. And that's how, because we just have to go kind of an honor system on who's working, what their hours are. For hourly employees, they clock in and clock out remotely. But, we're not monitoring what they're doing every minute of the day. And so it's really the way we'll know is, are they getting the results they promise? And we just have to trust people enough that, look, we're doing the right thing. We're buying computers, we're bending over backwards so you can keep working and so that you won't get laid off. And we just have to trust people that they're going to do their work when they're at home. And,
and whether it's made it to you or not, I know the staff is extremely grateful. I think we're definitely going to be coming out ahead at the end of all this.
The other thing that we've done that I think is important that we do on a regular basis is we had a virtual happy hour. Whoever wanted to last Friday at 4:30, they're on the clock still, but could pour a drink, and we all got together, the whole firm, on a big Zoom call and joked around and talked about anything other than work.
Exactly.
I just think that keeping that camaraderie and remembering that we're all on the same team is really important, because it can get really lonely working from home, and it can get really, people are scared right now. They're scared about their job. They're scared about their health, their family's health. They're scared about the economy. And I think the more we can do to make our team feel better and share our team, and the better off we're going to be.
No, I agree. And I think a lot of that is showing them that we can just jump right in and do the work. The technology might be a little bit different. The way we get it done might be a little bit different, but we're doing the same work.
Yeah, I think it's also important that we let our clients and our referral partners know that we are still working. We're working differently, but we are still working. This is how to get a hold of us. You can't just walk in the office, but we can still meet. We are still working on your case, and so I know we're sending out emails and letters and calling people, but I think it's really important. This is a time to touch base with your clients, touch base with your referral sources. And I'll be honest, I mean, we've had a great result. We're getting referrals in this last week and this week because people see that we are open and we are proactive, and it's we're actually, this is still working for us. We're settling cases, we're doing depots, we're doing mediations, we're signing up new cases.
Yeah, I was going to say we've had several lawyers do mediations and depositions so far with good results.
The other thing we've had to work on is most of our clients don't have scanners, and so we've had to move to DocuSign for signatures and move to finding online notaries. We're trying to get our people made online notaries, but that is going to take a little bit of time, and everything's probably slowed down now with all the state people working from home or not working. But there are websites. I think Notaries.com is one, but other websites that have online notaries where they can send you can send them the document and they'll get it notarized. And legally, digital signatures like DocuSign are just as good as a pen and ink signature, and so you can use those to, when you need to verify discovery answers, settlement documentations, new contracts, all kinds of whatever you need signed. We can authorizations, and that's working. And I think that's just something we need to think of. How do we keep the practice moving without having to be face to face with people?
Yeah, and I think that actually was one of the things that surprised me the most as we reached out to other lawyers, that there are some firms that actually have an entire workflow built around something like DocuSign, and so we've been able to, you talk with people and figure out, everybody's workflow is different, so it might not work for your firm, but the technology exists to make this happen for sure. And DocuSign and Notaries.com are great tools, and there's others like that.
Well, I guess kind of to close it up, let's try to talk about what are your biggest takeaways that you think that you want to offer to our audience.
I think my biggest takeaway for this whole experience that we're going through, and we've talked about this a little bit, is to see it as an opportunity to get new skills that can make your practice more efficient going forward. It's also an opportunity to spend a little bit more time with your family. I mean, I'm saving 30, 45 minutes a day in commute time that I can then sit and have breakfast with the kids, have lunch with them, read a book with them. So I see this as an opportunity to push our abilities as attorneys and as we go forward technologically, and spend a little bit more time with our family. Those are my big takeaways.
Yeah, I think this is really the time that we all need to step up and be leaders for our firms, leaders for our clients, leaders for our communities, and keep our practices going. We need to be patient because we're going to have things aren't going to always work perfectly. We're going to have to work through technical issues, and just, be patient and mindful that, hey, at least you're not in the hospital on a ventilator, or you're not going broke. Let's keep this thing going. I think it's important. We're going to have to acknowledge the feelings that people have, our clients, our employees, everyone else, that, you need to let them vent, and then just say, look, we're working through this the best we can. Let's get this done. And I think the last thing is, this is really a time with all the stress we're under that we really have to take care of ourselves. I mean, I'm getting back to, if you live in a place where you can safely go out and walk or run, I'm lucky I live in a fairly rural part. I mean, it's a little city, but it's not very densely populated. So I can go out on the trails or on the street and stay more than 6 feet away from people at all times. So, I've been getting out and getting exercise done. That helps a lot on the stress,
And just the cabin fever.
Yeah, just if you can get outside, meditate, pray, read, whatever you need to do to get your mind off this situation, turn off the social media, turn off the news, and just let your brain recharge. Because, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else. So I just, as a closing note, we're going to get through this. We're going to come out the other side bit better and stronger. Just, hang on, keep working, don't quit, but take care of yourself while you're doing it. thank you very much. I look forward to seeing you guys next time on Trial Lawyer Nation.
Thank you for joining us on Trial Lawyer Nation. I hope you enjoyed our show. If you're listening to this episode on a mobile device, please click on Ratings and Review and leave our show a 5-star rating and write a review. And if you're listening to this episode from our website, please leave a 5-star rating on the episode page. We'd love to reach more listeners, and doing this will help more attorneys find this podcast. You can also visit our website at www.triallawyernation.com to opt into our mailing list so you can stay updated on our new episodes. I promise we won't spam you. And thanks to your feedback, we've improved our podcast website. There's now a resources tab that you can click that shows you all the books we've mentioned on our podcast. If you have a Facebook account, please send us a request to join a private group called Trial Lawyer Nation Insider Circle. This exclusive group will allow you to hear about our guests before an episode airs, interact with the show, and get a sneak peek at some of the behind-the-scenes moments. I love to hear from all of you, and our Table Talk episodes are based solely on questions from our fans. So please continue to send us emails at podcast@triallawyernation.com. Thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to having you with us next time on Trial Lawyer Nation.
Each year, the law firm of Cowen, Rodriguez, Peacock pays millions of dollars in co-counsel fees to attorneys nationwide on trucking and company vehicle cases. If you have a case involving death or catastrophic injuries and would like to partner with our firm, please contact us. We have experience finding potential defendants that other firms miss, and we've added millions of dollars to cases by finding these sources of recovery. If you have a catastrophic injury or death case where the policy limits appear to be insufficient, give us a call. If we can find another defendant, we can partner on the case. And if we can't, then we won't ask for any of the fees. You can reach DeLisi Friday by calling 210-941-1301 or send an email to podcast@triallawyernation.com. She will coordinate a time for Michael Cowen to speak with you in person or by phone to discuss the case in detail. This podcast has been hosted by Michael Cowen and is not intended to, nor does it create the attorney-client privilege between our host, guest, or contributors and any listener for any reason. Content from the podcast is not to be interpreted as legal advice. All thoughts and opinions